When I was to take my entrance exam to the conservatory all those years ago, I remember waiting in a hall with approximately 100 other applicants ready to compete for the 5 spots the school had to offer. A professor greeted us with a test in his hands, but before he handed them out he said, "Remember, if you can be anything else in your life than this, do that instead." It was surely meant as a joke, and he earned a chuckle from the crowd, but the word stuck with me all these years, because like most great jokes, it had a grain of truth to it. Why are some people dead set on choosing this profession, even though they know that their career options are unstable at best? Why are some people hell-bent on walking down the path of the arts year after year without results? Some continue even to the point of self-destruction. Needless to say, no one in that exam hall stood up and left. We all handed in our papers with hopes in our eyes. So what is this energy or conviction that makes art so all-consuming and important? In this video, we'll delve into the term of artistic temperament and what that means for the people who are affected by it. We tend to imagine our prehistoric selves as a primitive bunch, predominantly occupied with getting food on the table and shelter over our heads. But around 7300 BCE, a group of humans took time off in their day to make these handstand stills on the bare rock. There are cave paintings that's much older than this, but this one is of a more personal nature. It's as if they said, "We were here," and so they left a part of themselves behind on that wall. Our prehistoric selves were also concerned with beauty and often chose to carve elaborate designs into their boats, their skin or tools, and so they elevated their mundane objects into works of art. It is in these items and paintings of old stories and in rituals and ceremony that we find the first cases of the need to escape or elevate something for the sole cause of self-expression. This need for self-expression is often defined as the artistic temperament. And based on this old evidence, we can conclude that it has been a part of the human experience for as long as humans have existed. Creativity is not just for artistic purposes. It can manifest itself in a specially good home-cooked meal. It can be the way you manage to repair your headset with parts of an old hose, or how you stacked your schedule so you were able to reach your goals for the week. Every one of us has the ability to be creative, but for some, creativity is more than a tool to solve everyday problems. It is a goal in its own, meant to be pushed until something that has never been seen or heard before is created from it. That drive, that will and obsession to create, is what many describe as the artistic temperament. While skill at your chosen form of art often follows this insane drive, it is unfortunately not guaranteed. I think many of us know that one person in our lives with a huge drive, but just can't seem to get any better at what they do. Or if they do, they improve slowly. I won't name any names, but if you know, you know. Normally, if you're not in a multi-million-dollar band already, this manifestation of artistic temperament can lead to a lot of suffering, as your drive and ambition does not align with your abilities. That being said, nothing is written in stone, and it's therefore all the more impressive when people work 4 or 5 times harder than everyone else to reach the goals set by their drive. On the other end of the scale, you have those with huge amounts of talent and skill, but little or no ambition to do anything about it. Most of us know that person as well. The one who plays an instrument like a professional at the age of 12, but just kind of brushes it off and takes it for granted. Later they get an education that has nothing to do with art, and when they grow up, they are completely fine with just shelving the instrument for an unknown amount of time. I'd argue that these people do not have that obsessive part of the artistic temperament, but more a laid-back relationship to the entire thing. Art is a good thing to have in their lives, but not a necessity. Some manage to shift their temperament and drive from being self-centric, which means working on their own art, to being more altruistic, which means promoting the works of other artists. Many find that simply being a part of the artistic process can satiate their artistic temperament, And so they become promoters, art teachers, event organizers, art journalists, or create YouTube content about art. Meh. That doesn't mean that promoters or art teachers are bad at their chosen form of art. There are of course highly professional artists that are teachers and promoters. I'm just trying to illustrate that artistic temperament can manifest itself and be expressed in many different ways. The examples I used earlier are highly polarized, and the artistic temperament is a spectrum more than a certainty. Most of us may have a little of all the examples mentioned. In the most pathological cases of temperamental obsession, the artistic temperament is usually combined with mental illness. I often use Fango as an example in my videos, and even here he is a great example, as scholars agree that the great artist suffered from some sort of mental illness. They disagree about what illness he had, but there have been arguments that he suffered from bipolar, autism or schizophrenia, and it is clear from his writings that he suffered from something. Van Gogh lived in obscurity his entire life. He was a man with a lot of passion and love for others, yet his efforts to connect with other people were frequently received with fear or misunderstanding. He often expressed this despair and longing for companionship in his writing. The great artist writes, "A great fire burns within me, but no one stops to warm themselves at it, and passers-by only see a wisp of smoke." Van Gogh was in many ways the personification of the artistic temperament. After being miserable most of his life and failing to keep the simplest jobs, he figured that the only way to make sense of the suffering was in self-expression and in the form of art. He put all the love he had for the world in his paintings and created some of the most colorful and vibrant paintings we have seen to this day. Van Gogh dedicated both his body and soul to the arts, and he obsessed about his creations to the point where he did nothing but paint for months on end. In these flurries of creation he would often forget about the needs of the body, and when the flurry ended he was left weak, exhausted and emaciated. Yet for him, this was the only way to live. It was the only way he could make sense of this alien world and the miseries within it. As humans, be it the modern artist or the ancient cave painter, we've realized that we need more than just food and shelter. We need to play, as we did when we were children, so that we can combat the existential crisis that looms overhead and wage war against the thoughts that remind us that life is and always will be absurd, a jest or a meaningless joke. The artistic temperament is there so that you can fight despair and the absence of meaning. It is there to give you a form of escape in self-expression that lets you forget about all sense and analysis of the world. As with the ancient hunters that knew so well how to survive in this world, so is the artistic drive an act of survival, a necessity and a place where meaning can be found in an act or in the creation of something. If you are one of those with the artistic temperament, find what you need to satiate its so consuming presence and find peace with it, for without it you might find yourself completely lost.